grew up in Mendocino, little tiny town, and my parents took in foster kids. And when my brother was 5, they actually adopted him. And I took Tony away from my parents when I was 24 and he was 15, and realized that there are just no programs out there for teenage kids, and especially if they're not college bound. But some of the stories he told me about growing up in foster care would give anyone nightmares, let alone having to live through it. So he ended up with colon cancer and was infected with HIV at a hospital in Dallas. And in 2000, I promised him that I would create a school to be able to take these kids off the streets so they didn't have to live through the nightmares like he did. And so that became the first inkling that I was going to do this. He passed away 5 years. We actually got 10 years total of having him here instead of 6 months. And during that 10 years, I was able to do a lot of things with him that I don't think most people ever get a chance to adventure. And it made me realize that unless you actually have somebody who's there to protect you, most of you probably had a really good family life, or you probably wouldn't be sitting here. You must have had someone, like I did, school teachers or mentors who came along in my life and actually helped guide me through this maze of confusion. You know, when you're growing up, there's so many things that go wrong. When I was 15 years old, someone paid for me to go for a week in Occidental up by Sacramento, or Santa Rosa. And it changed my life because it made me realize that I was more than just the daughter of parents who didn't know how to treat children because they were never treated properly as children. And it goes on and on, generation after generation. So I became curious, learned a lot of things about personality recognition, why people learn, some do, some don't, how they learn, the different processes that kids have to go through. I was 44 years old before I realized I was smart. I have 144 IQ, did not even know I was intelligent. I figured everybody thought the way I did, so it was pretty normal for me. It's the way I thought afterwards. You know, so it's mainly if children are taken at an early enough stage, and I wish that we could take them at 6 years old. But at 15 years old, we have 3 judges in the Bay Area who are willing to emancipate these children and give them a choice. They can go to juvenile hall or Ultimate Business University, UBU. So over the last 13 years, but specifically the last 3 years, I've been able to gather a group of people. Melody, Doris, and Ollie are doing student recruitment around the Bay Area. Have any of you ever heard of Doug Hawley? He was a linebacker for the Detroit Lions. I actually had an entrepreneur training program, and I taught Doug how to go out into the business community and speak to organizations to get financial funding. And in turn, he said, Sharon, what you're doing is so amazing, I want to help you. So he introduced me to these judges, and that's how we began the focus. A year ago, I also have an author program because I've done a lot of entrepreneur training, and I have an author program where I teach people how to write their book from their heart so that they can actually get out into the business world, stop having a job they don't like, and create a 6-figure income. And one of the women that I worked with, I called her a month after I talked to her. It was May a year ago. And just checking in, did she have a chance to write her book? Did she have a chance to get started? And she said, no, but your ears must have been burning yesterday. I said, why? Because it was Sunday? Mm-hmm. And she said that at church, there was a woman there that her uncle actually has a fund that they're looking for philanthropic projects. I said, well, that's really cool, right? Being in the right place, talking to the right person, remembering to follow up, all those different skills that I had taught all the entrepreneurs. So I met with the broker, finished the business plan up, did a synopsis. That was in July, a year ago. December 28th, I got the phone call. They had approved my project. Out of 60,000, 20 were approved. So I have been awarded $309 million to actually build the school in Belize. It started out as it was going to be 300 boys, and then it was grow and grow and grow until we had 3,000 and then a girls' school. So you might see on the brochure that I forgot to add girls. Well, now that we have 300 million, we can do both the boys and the girls' schools simultaneously. The first year, which will be September a year from now, we're going to take 500 boys and 500 girls because I want to work out the kinks. I don't want these kids to be subjected to something that isn't working. So the major part that is different than most education is we're actually going to be taking all of the curriculum and put it into multimedia. So math, science, history, English is all gonna look like a Star Wars movie. Then visiting instructors will come and teach things like auto mechanics, art, dance, cooking, sewing, every kind of course that we think is an elective will be mandatory. Starting their junior year, they're gonna write their own grant so they can go to any college anywhere in the world. Every child will write their own book by the end of their senior year, because it's gonna show a legacy to other kids who are living on the streets. Today we have 200,000 children under 19 living on the streets in the United States without adult supervision. 50% of those kids will be dead by the time they're 35 or incarcerated. It's not their fault that they're in the situation that they're in. And I always think about how rough my family life was, but I still had a roof over my head. I knew I was sleeping every night. I knew I could go out and get a job and come back to that house and at least know that I was gonna have food, even if I had to buy it. These kids have no idea where they're sleeping tonight. These kids that are gonna be in front of the judges, they won't be hardened criminals. At 15, it's pretty hard to be hardened, but if you have to fight for every day of your life, you can become hardened by the time you're 15. But we're gonna be taking kids, first-time, second-time offenders for shoplifting, breaking an entry, looking for a place to live, and we're gonna turn them around so that they actually have a choice. They can come to UVU or they can go to juvenile hall. But the miracle of this is that through all the processes, and I don't know if all of you have ever thought about this, but every experience you have in your life brings you to where you are at this moment. And I'm so grateful for all of the lessons that I've had. Some are pretty tough, but I am who I am because of every lesson I've been exposed to. So these kids are gonna learn what they went through. Could be their inspiration or it could be their downfall. They're gonna be taught how to think for themselves, not how to memorize information and then regurgitate it for a test. They're gonna learn how to do things, to be self-sustaining. Our school will be 100% self-sustaining within 5 years. We're gonna grow our own crops. We'll have chickens and pigs, much to my dismay. I didn't want pigs, but we're gonna have our own manufacturing. We're gonna grow coffee. We're gonna have our own coffee bean, what do you call it? The plantation with the beans, we brewery. We're gonna make our own beans. The coffee plantation itself will actually support 25% of our budget, which is $85 million a year with 3,000 kids in each school. So we have a lot of ways of regenerating information, but also teaching the education. We'll teach boat making, stained glass, pottery, everything that we could imagine as an art, a skill, so that these kids, by the time they are 18, they will have been exposed to everything that they need, not only to survive, but to thrive. They'll be taught how to find out what they're passionate about. You know, people who like math, I was a math major, it sounds ridiculous, but I love math. But I didn't even know that that was unique. You know, I look at things in terms of numbers. So when I think about these kids living on the streets and not having a chance to actually live a life that they truly deserve because of the circumstance where they were born, and if one person intervenes, I mean, you think about what UVU is doing, it's only gonna be 2% of all the children out there in the world. But I've already met 2 other people who have similar ideas. You know, I'm looking to actually create transition houses, so they're live workspaces. So the military bases that are closed, you know, being able to convert those to where the kids can have a job and make some money, but have a safe place to live, so that they don't have to get into illegal aspects of surviving. So we do need teachers. It's not just for kids. Of course, we're gonna have 20 children for every teacher. We're gonna have a teacher assistant for every teenager. We have separate dorms, sophomore, junior, senior. The boys' campus and the girls' campus are 5,000 acres apart.
Do we have a schematic?
We actually
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How many students have signed up for this program so far?
We actually can't have them sign up until probably summertime next year.
Are you finding that they're willing to leave their environment
I worked with a women's shelter in Oakland, and I was able to talk to about 20 kids, and every one of them said, sign me up, and a few of the parents said, take them. I've had parents, this is actually the layout of the school, and I've had parents tell me that even though their kids have a home, they would like them to come to this kind of school. Because what we'll be able to do is take kids that are barely getting by and teaching them how to become able to use their intelligence. Stanford actually did a study after finding 2,000 children, no matter what the ethnicity or income background. 98% of everyone born is born with a genius capacity. It diminishes 25% until at the age of 21, 2% are left. So we can actually regenerate that ability to learn and retain and actually find the things that they're passionate about. And I think that's what makes the difference. And if there's other questions, I would.
Where is the money, and 309 million, do you already own the land and the building, the structure's already there?
That comes out of the 309 million.
Okay, so where is the money coming that's being generated to be
It's a
able to?
private source.
Okay, and that's already secured? And it's ongoing, it's not like a one-time
Right.
crime?
And then they'll eventually be self-sustaining.
We will be self-sustaining
Right.
within 3 to 5 years, yeah.
And then, have you met with the local judges at all to find?
3 in the Bay Area.
But,
Not
Yeah.
out here. This is, I think this came about
We
what?
have.
Oh, you have.
We have already.
So, we just heard about this Thursday?
Yes.
I think it was Thursday evening or something, I think it was. So I haven't had a chance to meet with any of the judges here, but
Well, Melanie had actually brought it to me a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I already had meetings with judges to start with, so at the same time, I actually gave them the opportunity to tell me what they wanted to do with this, and they said, if it's possible for us to emancipate some of those kids and give them a better life, we'll do it. And so, we've got them online with us.
What's
Judge
the-
Flaviano was ill, but I got a couple more. Go ahead.
what is the time frame to emancipate a youth?
It usually takes anywhere between 60 and 90 days.
So a youth that opts for this when they're standing in front of the judge then would be detained until
well, that's what
then
we're
they.
talking about, the transition centers. So to have facilities like, we have Alameda Air Force Base, we have Treasure Island. Treasure Island, there's over 2 million square feet of empty warehouse space. So if I could find a manufacturer that wanted to move in there and have some kind of manufacturing, you know, LED lights are like really in need right now. You know, something like that.
But that wouldn't stop them from going ahead and allowing the kid to go ahead and go into the program, even though the emancipation might take that 60 to 90 days.
So they would then just, there's the process for the passport, the visa,
Yes,
all of that kind of
has to
stuff.
take place at that time.
And we actually have in Belize, the brother of the person who issues the visas is on our side. So we have 24 hours that he'll actually get his visas, which is pretty amazing.
I can imagine that some of these kids are gonna have some pretty heavy issues, because, I mean, their skill set is, you know, surviving on the streets. Is there something in your plan that will address, you know, that issue, or those issues?
Thank you for asking that. Because of all the things that I was exposed to, think of every abuse you can imagine, and then double that. That's what I was exposed to as a child. When I worked with the Buddhist monks in 1998, they actually told me I was the only person they ever met in the United States who had no negative energy in my body. So there are ways of reversing the negativity, no matter what it is. And one of the programs is called Nesting. It's a program that I developed. Within 1 hour, you can take the most critical aspect that anyone has been exposed to, so fear, anger, abandonment. All of those things can be reversed so that they're memories, which then allows these kids to learn. So the multimedia education that we're working with, they took the worst kids in Northern California and they put them through this multimedia course. They ended up with the highest grade increase of any group of kids in the United States after 1 year.
One of the things that you have that is critical to this is the change of environment.
Yeah.
I don't know, some of you might have ever, just that 3 days of being at the Asparagus Festival, some of the kids that were part of the one program, actually, we had one documented gang member that was there. He had on his Yankees jersey and he had on his cap, and the gang unit was there at the Asparagus Festival, and they saw him. They immediately went over and started questioning him about why he was there. Now, of course, I went to his rescue because he was there to work. He wasn't there to cause any trouble. But he actually stood there, listened to what they had to say, and when they finished, he just walked over and got behind me, and they left, and he went back to work. And I really believe that was that environmental change, because he was actually around some people that he didn't have to be threatened by. And he had been there for a couple of days already. And he had actually gotten to know some people and made some new friends and things of that sort. And he didn't know that he was standing next to the chief of police when he was actually making the asparagus, until later on when he introduced himself to him. And so it was cases like that to where some of the kids just actually, their whole demeanor and their whole attitude changed because of that environmental change. So just imagine them going to police, right? And the environment is changing, or just the ambiance of being in something like that. It changes the whole attitude.
They're gonna freak out.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh, I can
Yeah.
imagine.
Well,
What if they get there and they don't like it?
They can come home.
They can come home.
We're not holding them prisoners, that's for sure.
This is not a detention center.
This is the school. So I met with my architect 5 years ago, and 2 years later, I said, I want the school to look like a modern day version of Harry Potter's Hogwarts castle. And in 3 days, this is what he actually came up with, which is magical. So imagine being on the streets and living in a castle, growing up in a castle.
Thank you, dressing them up.
Did I?
You got them all wondering.
So the idea is, like, the spires on the castle are art studios with easels so that the kids can go up 120 feet and draw and paint. They're gonna have everything you could imagine, like the best of all education, from music. We're gonna have music festivals. I was telling Melody on the way over here, one of the future plans is 3 to 5 years from now, actually buying a separate property where we'll do music festivals, where we can actually have like a Caribbean music festival, and it'll be part of our fundraising, but it's to involve the kids in music. Everyone knows that kids who play a musical instrument are much better at math and twice as likely to go on to college, and yet that's one of the programs that's been cut out of our schools. So this is something that we're going to take every possible course that we can think of, no matter how ridiculous it is. The kids are gonna learn hypnotherapy, because when you learn how to control your own emotions, then you don't have that knee-jerk reaction. So there's just so many things that we'll be able to incorporate in this.
Any more questions?
So you're willing to take students from throughout the United States?
Yes.
Because I'm not speaking for everyone, I don't think we could, 300 students not possible.
Well, no.
There might be a-
We'll start with that.
I mean, there might be a few
Well,
that
in Northern
this-
California, you know, there's 60,000 children in juvenile halls sleeping on the floors because there are no beds.
Well, why out of the country? Is there a reason why the
It's-
kids have to go out?
The
of the
biggest
country?
reason is it's 45,000 a year to take care of a child here.
Mhm.
It's 15,000 in Belize. And then, just like you were saying, to move them from their environment so they can't just jump a fence and go back.
Well, I mean, the Stockton kid, you know, with the French camp, they're already there, but a remote place.
Yeah, they're not gonna hire a fence in Belize and try to.
Well, it's kinda like, the gentleman that says he's over the, Harrison Homes. Most of all the kids in Harrison Homes are from the Bay Area. So they've relocated them to this area because it's a farm area, and they actually, there's a lot less threat for them or whatever. They're trying to figure out where they are, first of all. And so they actually work a little bit better with the counselors and things of that sort, because they have been removed from their environment, so.
They're out-of-state placements though too, and I know that there's
Mhm.
a lot of careful consideration by a lot of different agencies regarding juvenile youth that are sent even to out-of-state. Out-of-county placements are one thing, but certainly out-of-state placements are much more intensive scrutiny.
It is.
By
and-
multiple agencies.
And that's what she was talking about with there being a probationary period to where they would actually go to one area here in the United States before they go there.
Mhm.
And that's why they would do that, to actually see if they can actually acclimate to, or to adjust to that, being away from home or being away from their area.
So we won't be taking drug addicts, we won't be taking kids that have committed a major crime. We will have the facilities to be able to handle things, but I don't want the other kids exposed to that.
What about the acclimation when they return? What will be put in place there?
Well, they'll be able to, because of the grants, go to any college anywhere in the world, and we have an amazing tracking system because of my math. I also taught myself COBOL, Fortran, DBase, Foxborough, every software writing there is. So we are going to be able to take tracking systems to figure out what happens to these kids. How many of them go to college? How many of them finish college? Do they go back to their original community? How many of them make a difference? How many want to come back to the UVU system? So Belize is the first campus. 6 months after we have UVU launch, we're already going to be breaking ground. We do have a property in Bataan, but it's for children in the Philippines. We already have commitments from the Gold Coast in Australia, and our first orphanage, 6 months old through 18 in South Africa. We have Tanzania, Uganda, and just have a new agreement with Tibet. So this is already, we're looking at 7 years of expansion before we've even gotten started.
What's the name of the benefactors?